right here. Yep, you're gonna go right here.
I see you more than I see my wife.
All right.
Hey, Glenn.
Although it's not bad outside. Oh, today.
That's it. Vince, Diana, we're all good? Okay. Got it. All good? We're all settled?
Okay. Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law, notice of
let me
this
gavel.
meeting.
Diana, let me go.
I'm sorry.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I call this meeting of the Township of Union Planning Board to order on December 16, 2024 at 7:04 p.m. Sunshine Act notice, please.
Certainly. Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law, notice of this meeting stating the time and place was satisfied by the filing of an annual notice with the local source and the Star Ledger, newspapers of general circulation within the Township of Union, and posted on the bulletin board of the Township of Union Municipal Building.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander?
Here.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Mr. Lay?
Here.
Mrs. Espinoza? Mr. Miller? Ms. Perkins? Mayor Figueredo?
Here.
William Bowser?
Here.
Mr. Frame?
Here.
Ms. Khan?
Here.
Can we swear the engineer, please?
Will you raise your right hand? You swear the testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Yes, I do.
Our first item on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from November 18, 2024. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cohan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Frame. Roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Lay?
Yes.
Mayor Figueredo?
Abstain.
Raymond Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Frame?
Yes.
Ms. Khan?
Yes.
The next item up is the resolution for the recommendation of the Floodplain Management Municipal Code. Can I get a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cohan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Khan. Roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Lay?
Yes.
Mayor Figueredo?
Yes.
Raymond Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Frame?
Yes.
Ms. Khan?
Yes.
The next resolution is from application 2024-08 Crystal Restaurants. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Cohan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Alexander. Roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Lay?
Yes.
Mayor Figueredo?
Yes.
Raymond Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Frame?
Yes.
Ms. Khan?
Yes.
We have two items up for new business tonight. The first item up first is call Kristen Russell with the proposed ordinance zoning changes for Chapter 170.
Good evening. Kristen Russell here with Colliers Engineering. I have what I expect will be a rather brief presentation this evening. I want to give you some background. I was here this past summer, I think it was summer, and presented to you a master plan reexamination and related zoning code amendments. You recommended those amendments to the to the Township Committee, but it was brought to our attention that somehow that never happened. The Township Committee still needs to adopt them, and although I've presented them to you before, because of the lapse in time and perhaps some new people on the board, I was just asked to present that to you again. It's the same information that I provided earlier in the year, but I just wanted it to be fresh on everybody's mind so that, assuming you make a recommendation this evening, you do know what it is we're talking about.
Ms. Russell, would you raise your right hand? You swear the testimony about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you. So as I said earlier this year, we had, you had adopted a master plan reexamination, and within that reexamination, there were several recommendations regarding changes to the zoning code. The first of which was a recommendation that the NC zone be revised to eliminate residential uses. This requires a simple striking of such uses in the table of uses within your zoning code, and any density requirements that would correlate to them, since they would no longer be relevant. Additionally, the master plan reexamination recommended the rezoning of 2 parcels from TOD to CI. These are parcels that are currently being used by Peerless Beverage and other industrial uses in the area, and there is no expectation that those will be immediately adapted or redeveloped in a TOD capacity. So this rezoning would align the zoning of those parcels to match what is actually happening on the ground. In addition to changes that were recommended in the master plan reexamination, we had several administrative changes that I had presented to you. I'm just going to go over the gist of them now. These are miscellaneous amendments requested by the township, including regulation of massage and bodywork services, tattoo parlors, prohibiting methadone clinics, and parking of flatbed utility trailers. Specifically, tattoo parlors, we went and defined them matching the definition that the state provides. Technically, they are body art establishments, although colloquially we call them tattoo parlors. And this would confine them to, as a conditional use, to properties along Route 22. Methadone clinics, again, it's a state definition, and that is one use that we are allowed to prohibit, and we've done so. Massage and bodywork, this is actually regulated elsewhere in the code through licensing and inspection regulations. However, we have cross-referenced that health and safety section of code within zoning so that they are consistent with each other and the two are understood to speak to one another. And last but not least, we were asked by the zoning officer to clarify a regulation on utility trailers, prohibiting the parking of them on residential lots, just for clarification in their enforcement practices. That's really all that I have. It probably sounds familiar to most of you, but as I said, the process was not carried through, and that's where we are tonight. But to refresh your memories, I'm happy to take any questions, or if anything new has come into your minds, I'm happy to talk about it.
Questions from the board? Questions from the public? Please come up. Come up to this mic here. You just need to identify yourself.
My name's Tony Baratucci, 1044 Mount Vernon Road. My question is about trailers. I own a boat with a trailer. Does this mean that we can't park boats or trailers?
There's regulation
in a
already.
parking lot?
There's already regulation in the code that you can't, regulating the parking of boats and trailers on residential lots. So whatever regulation you're under now is actually going to be,
Okay.
whatever the boat regulation is now, the trailer will also be under that same regulation.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the public? Comments from the board?
So what you would do now is recommend this to the Township Committee for adoption.
All right. Before we do that, any comments from the public? Okay. Hearing none, can I get a motion, please, to concur with the proposed ordinance zoning changes for Chapter 170 and refer this back to the Township Committee for final adoption?
Motion.
Moved by Mr. Frayne. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Cohan. Roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Cohan,
Yes.
Mr. Lay,
Yes.
Mayor Camarino,
Yes.
Lyndon Bowser,
Yes.
Mr. Frame,
Yes.
Ms. Conlon.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the holiday.
All right, the second item up, and if I could just say thank you for the patience of the public here and as well as our applicant. I know that this has been a long time waiting for this actually to be heard, and it will be heard tonight. It's application 2024-04 Watchung Developers. Can the representative please?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Stephen Hale, representing the applicant Watchung Developers, and appreciate the board and the public's patience also, and your board professionals. So, and I think we may have, several months ago, began with brief opening statements, but I know there's some new board members, and I thought what we would do is maybe, I'll again give a brief introduction and overview of the application, and then we can move on to our witnesses. I know Mr. Lieberman is here. One of the things that I spoke to council that when it comes time for questioning, and Greg, if you want to explain in more detail.
As far as the questioning is concerned, the Larchmont Association is represented by council, so council will be asking questions on their behalf. Members of the association should not be asking questions of the witnesses. They will have an opportunity to comment publicly, but not be asking questions of the witnesses.
Understood, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and again, Mr. Chairman and board members, again, representing Watchung Developers in connection with this property. What's proposed here is the construction of 11-unit apartment building on this site. Just to note that the property is zoned and permits the multifamily use. We meet all zoning criteria, including height, density, setbacks, FAR. The only variance associated with the project that isn't created as part of this project is lot width. Lot width is required to be 150 feet. We have 140 feet. That is not being intensified as part of this application. Furthermore, we're not seeking any deviations of or variances for setbacks or the like. So it is essentially a variance-free application. And I will note that I know there's members of the public and Larchmont objecting to this. Multifamily residential is probably one of the least intense uses for this property and for the neighborhood. Among the permitted uses in the NC zone are restaurants, brew pubs, retail sales and services, medical offices, child care centers. Any of those uses are also permitted, which would certainly be much more intense, both by way of hours, traffic, and the like. And I think that's important. No, and our planner will touch on that in more detail when our planner testifies. But we have received all of your departmental reports. Don't have any problem complying with any terms and conditions of those reports. And this application was in fact deemed complete. And I know, Mr. Chair, you noted that there's been several adjournments of the case. It was deemed complete on June 11th of 2024. So that's an overview of our application, and what we'd like to do first is start with our site engineer, Mark Ramo, to give us an idea of existing conditions at the site, and then what's proposed by way of improvements. Oh yeah, you want help with that?
Mr. Haley, if you could just summarize, how many witnesses are you calling tonight?
We propose to start with our site engineer, Mark Ramo, Mark Marion, our architect, Gary Dean, our traffic engineer, and John Takina, our professional planner.
So 4 witnesses.
Correct. I think you'll be sworn first there, Mark?
Yeah, Mr. Ramo, would you spell your last name for the record?
My name is Mark, M-A-R-C, Remo, R-E-M-O.
Mr. Ramo, will you raise your right hand? Swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Remo, I know over the years you've testified before this board, but for the benefit of the board professionals, and the public, if you could briefly give your credentials, area of expertise, licenses you hold, and whether you've been accepted as a professional engineer before their boards or courts of the state.
Sure. I'm a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey, New York, several other states, and the District of Columbia. I'm also a licensed professional planner in New Jersey and a certified municipal engineer. I have about 40 years' experience in site plan and subdivision design. I've provided professional engineering and planning testimony at numerous boards, including this board.
Board stipulates.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, Mr. Remo, if you could take us through, as I said in my beginning, the existing conditions at the site, and then we can move on to what's proposed by way of improvements and any municipal reviews. And if there are plans that were submitted, and it's been the practice of this board, we don't need to mark them. Any new exhibits would have to be marked as a new exhibit.
Yeah, everybody, the board should have all the plans that
Okay.
I'm showing.
Just identify what
So-
the plan is and the page number.
Yeah, so this is sheet 3. This is basically the existing conditions as exists currently. So the property being developed is known as lots 1, 2, and 3 in block 4501. It's also known as 1005 Larchmont Road. The site is located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Larchmont Road and Morris Avenue. The property is an irregular shaped lot with a width of 140 feet and a depth of 168 feet. The property has 140 feet of frontage along Larchmont Road and 191 feet of frontage along Morris Avenue. The area of the property is 24,829 square feet, or 0.57 acres. Currently, the site is developed and it consists of a 1.5-story frame and brick single-family dwelling. It also has a asphalt paved driveway and a concrete patio. And the rest of the site is predominantly woodlands and grass. There is an existing sanitary sewer located within a 5-foot wide easement that runs along the property line of lots 1 and 2 that connects to an 8-inch line on Larchmont Road. The topography of the site generally slopes in a northwesterly direction towards Larchmont Road. The site is located in the NC Neighborhood Core Zone District. Uses surrounding the site are single-family detached properties to the north and to the east, offices and a church to the north and west. To the south and east is a bank and offices, and to the south and west is a funeral home and offices. So this is the site plan sheet 4. So the applicant for the project is proposing to demolish the existing house and construct a 3-story multifamily dwelling and an asphalt paved parking lot to serve the development. There's a total of 11 apartment units proposed. First floor will contain 3 one-bedroom units. The second floor will contain 4 two-bedroom units, and the third floor will contain 4 two-bedroom units. The approximate dimensions of the building are 68 feet by 109 feet. The building will be set back 37 feet from Larchmont Road, 37 feet from Morris Avenue, 35 feet from the property line, to the side, and also the rear property line will be set back 35 feet. There's 20 parking spaces proposed, including one handicap parking space and one electrical vehicle parking space. The dimensions of the stalls are 9 by 18 feet, and the handicap space will be 8 by 18 feet with an 8-foot wide aisle for van accessibility. The parking lot will be partially covered by the second floor of the building. Access to the site will be from Larchmont Road by way of a 24-foot wide access driveway. That'll be two-directional. There will be minimal truck traffic anticipated. The aisle widths should be sufficient, and the traffic impacts should be minimal at the driveway. So we'll go to the grading and drainage plan, which is sheet 5. So proposed drainage improvements for the project include the construction of a subsurface detention facility that'll be located underneath the parking lot, and a storm sewer system to collect the surface runoff from the roof and also from the parking lot. All that runoff will be directed to the detention facility. The proposed detention facility will have a storage capacity of 4,976 cubic feet. It'll consist of 15 feet by 114 feet by 3-foot deep Brentwood storm tank modules. The outflow structure will control the runoff from the site. The outflow pipe will be connected to an existing storm sewer on Larchmont Road. And since all the runoff will be directed to the detention facility, there will be no impact on the downstream areas. As far as utilities go, proposed utilities will be existing gas, water, and electric, and sanitary sewer. Those will be extended from Larchmont Road into the site. And as far as lighting and landscaping, we'll go to sheet 6. So lighting will consist of 10-foot high pole-mounted luminaires. There'll be LED lights located along the perimeter of the parking lot. There'll be down lights so they won't shine onto adjacent properties or the existing roadway system. Canopy lights will also be proposed under the garage. As far as landscaping, proposed landscaping will consist of shade trees planted along Morris Avenue and Larchmont Road. Flowering type trees will be planted along the perimeter of the parking lot and also the perimeter of the building. Foundation type plants will be planted along the perimeter of the building, and screening type trees will be planted along the trash enclosure and also along the side and rear property lines. All other areas will be seeded and sodded. As far as variances, there's one bulk C-type variance required. That's for a minimum lot width required is 150 feet, where 140 feet is existing and proposed. This variance is pre-existing and attributed to the existing size of the property. In addition, the proposed multifamily residential use is a permitted use in the zone, and the variance required is minor in nature and is a pre-existing condition. We have received comments from the Township Board Engineer in a letter dated August 30th, 2024, and also from the fire official in a letter dated, actually it wasn't dated, and the applicant plans to work with the board engineer and the fire official to address the comments. If the board would like me to go through the comments, I will.
Mr. Chairman, we have no problem complying with any of the terms and conditions, and certainly if you want Mr. Ramo, he can go through each of the items in the Collier letter.
Actually, please do.
Okay.
What's that?
Mark, why don't you take us through
Okay.
you've identified the one pre-existing variance. Why don't we begin with on the Collier's letter, beginning on 2.1.
Okay, so in the Colliers letter dated August 30th, 2024, 2.1, off-site site track improvements. We're proposing curb, driveway, aprons, landscaping, utility connections to Larchmont Road. That's just a comment. Item 2.2, all trenching in the Larchmont Road right-of-way shall consist of flowable fill. We have no problem with that. We'll propose flowable fill. Stormwater, item number 2.3, stormwater will be connected to the inlet on Larchmont Road. The inlet shall be examined and structurally repaired if necessary during connection. All repairs shall be made with the direction of the township engineer. The applicant agrees to that. Site triangle should be shown on the egress driveway on Larchmont Road in accordance with AASHTO standards. I did prepare a sketch. We'll revise the plans to indicate that, but,
No problem in complying with that?
yeah, I do have a sketch here
All right.
that actually shows the sight line. So this is the driveway. So a car exiting the driveway looking right could basically see 135 feet
Okay.
to a vehicle that's coming towards the driveway to the right. And then towards Morris Avenue, you could basically see it in Morris Avenue, 192 feet, I believe it is.
Great.
So I don't see a problem with the site distance. Obviously, Larchmont Road, there's a horizontal curve that bends around, so that kind of limits your site, basically.
Okay.
As far as off-site improvements, item 3.1, the applicant shows basic, actually on-site improvements. The applicant shows basic on-site improvements. That's just a comment. Item 3.2, all water flows, domestic and sprinkler, shall be calculated by the applicant and confirmed availability by New Jersey American Water. We'll provide that. Item 3.3, any comments of the health and fire officials will be addressed prior to site improvement permit. Item number 4, grading and drainage, 4.1. Grading information on the plan clearly shows stormwater flow directed to the northwest. Additional grades should be shown in the area of the ADA accessibility spaces to confirm compliance with ADA grades and codes. As-built construction shall be required to confirm proper construction. We'll provide some additional grades in the handicap areas. Item 4.2, the applicant proposes increasing impervious coverage from 13.6 to 45.2, as indicated in the stormwater management report, therefore increasing the impervious coverage by 0.18 acres. Since the disturbance of 0.57 acres is less than 1 acre and the increase of the impervious coverage is 0.18, the project's not considered a major development. Item 4.4, applicant proposes the installation of stormwater detention facilities located below the parking lot to be converted, connected to the flow control structure and discharges into the inlet on Larchmont Road. Again, this is just a comment regarding the size of the system. Item 4.5, peak rates for the proposed detention facility for the 2, 10, 25, 50, and 100-year storm events are greater than the existing conditions during the storm events, which is unacceptable to the township ordinance. That's an incorrect statement. If we go to the drainage report, and we go down to the runoffs, you'll see that for the 2-year storm, we're decreasing the flow by 0.77 acres. 10-year storm, we're reducing the flow by 1.08 cubic feet per second, rather, not acres. 25-year storm, we're reducing it by 1.26 cubic feet per second. 50-year storm, we're reducing it by 1.35 cubic feet per second. And the 100-year storm, we're reducing it by 1.49 cubic feet per second. So we are reducing the flows. Item 4.6, the applicant shall submit an operation and maintenance plan for the stormwater detention facility. We'll provide that.
And as a matter of practice, that then gets recorded with the county,
With the
so
deed.
it's on record for maintenance of the stormwater system.
Item 5.2, this is regarding the ADA requirements.
Oh, 5.1.
Five,
I think you already said we comply with the parking, but
yeah, so 5.2, ADA requirements. For 12 parking spaces, basically, we need one spot, so we comply with that. That's just a comment. Item 5.3 is regarding the van accessibility. We comply with that. 5.4, in accordance with the ordinance, the handicap parking space must be equipped with EV equipment. We can provide that. As far as sanitary sewer, item 6.1, the applicant provided sanitary sewer flow calculations, and we're proposing, for the proposed conditions, 2,250 gallons per day, so there's no treatment works approval required. That's just a comment from the board engineer. Item 6.2, connections to the sewer line on Larchmont Road will require Township Department of Public Works approval. The applicant will comply with that. Traffic and circulation, the applicant shall demonstrate that the fire and emergency apparatus can access all areas of the site. Any proposed fire lane restrictions, parking from the Union Township emergency officials shall be implemented. We'll comply with that. I think the traffic engineer will go over and the fire expert will go over the fire apparatus. Item 7.2, the applicant shall demonstrate using a truck turning template that the path and method of how the garbage shall be collected from the proposed refuse area. I think the traffic engineer will go into detail with that, but I do have a sketch of what we're going to provide is a small turnaround area, so when the garbage truck comes in, he could back into this area and turn around so he doesn't have to back out into Larchmont Road.
is that a new exhibit?
I'm sorry?
That's a new exhibit?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't we have that marked as A1? And we'll provide copies.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can I point out the date of that exhibit?
Mark?
August 21st, 2024.
Okay, you can continue.
So item 8, technical comments, 8.1. The 3 existing lots shall be merged if this application is approved, and a new lot number obtained from the tax assessor. Applicant agrees to that.
And Mr. Chairman, we would prepare a lot consolidation deed with the description to be approved by your board engineer and then have it submitted and recorded.
Okay, so
Item 8.2, the site plan shall be revised to provide a note indicating the entire site will comply to ADA regulations. We'll provide that. Item 8.3, there is no area inside collection of garbage and recyclables. Residents will be expected to place garbage and recyclables in the outside trash and recycling storage area. The applicant shall provide a truck turning template to demonstrate the area to be accessible by truck. We went over that in the last comment with regard to the turnaround area. Item 8.4, the zoning table shall be updated to include a column for the existing conditions. We'll provide that. Also, the building height should be revised to 34 feet 5 inches, and the minimum public right-of-way, not the frontage, should be listed in the zoning table as 60 feet, which it is. We'll make those revisions. Item 8.5, the applicant shall testify on how many apartments will be affordable.
We have to just comply with whatever the affordable requirement is of the township.
8.6, the applicant shall testify on the status of the monument sign at the entrance from Morris Avenue to Larchmont Road. The monument sign is existing, it's going to remain as is. And item number 9, documents, permits, and approvals. The applicant, if it's approved, the applicant shall provide an engineer's estimate of site improvements. We agree to do that. The applicant shall obtain a site improvement permit. We agree to that. Pre-construction meeting shall be held. We agree to that. Item 9.4, applicant must obtain a building permit after receiving site improvement permits from the township. Applicant agrees to that. 9.5, applicant shall obtain approvals from Somerset Union Soil Conservation District and the Union County Planning Board. Applicant agrees to that. We've actually prepared, as part of the set of plans, a soil erosion plan, so that'll be submitted to the Somerset Union Soil Conservation District for their review and approval.
I think that covers, we can have the fire addressed separately, so.
Okay.
So, no further questions at this time of Mr. Ramo?
Questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, so, Mr. Remo, you indicate in your testimony and in the analysis letter from Colliers that the impervious coverage is increasing from 13.6 to 45.2. And then you indicate that in your one exhibit that you're actually going to be reducing runoff. Can you explain to me how that is? If we're
Well, we're
increasing
providing
impervious coverage, that we wouldn't have more runoff?
Well, that's why we're providing a detention facility. So the increase in runoff will be stored in the underground detention facility and then released. It'll be a controlled release so that we actually decrease the runoff after development.
And I tried to digest that chart with the calculations on it. I'm just curious, how do you go about calculating those numbers to represent that there's going to be reductions in runoff in the different storm events?
Well, we calculate the existing runoff and the proposed runoff based on what's being developed. And that difference in the runoff, obviously, when you pave the site or provide additional impervious coverage, you're increasing the runoff. So we take that runoff and put it in an underground system, control it with an outflow structure with a small orifice and a weir so that we reduce the flows.
And what happens if that detention facility reaches its capacity and there's additional water, additional runoff?
Well, it's based on a 100-year storm. I mean, if there's a storm event over a 100-year storm, there is a weir in the outlet structure, and the water will go over the weir and then into the outlet pipe that goes to Larchmont Road. But that's a 100-year storm. That would be a pretty big storm.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? I do have a couple questions on my end. To continue the line of question with regards to the calculation of the runoff, based on your report, the methodology you use is something called the rational method.
Mhm.
What I've noticed that when I was looking at the calculations and the numbers that you provided, that this is limited to peak flow, but it's not, does not account for runoff volume, correct?
No, it accounts for volume also, yeah.
Okay. So within, this is where it's unclear to me because the chart that you presented on, I do believe, page 4 and 5 of your report, the net increases or decreases is based on a unit of cubic feet per second. So that is rate. So has there been a calculation of volume, total runoff volume?
Well, I mean, we designed the system to reduce the flow rates. And in addition to actually reducing the flow rates, we're also infiltrating stormwater into the ground, because it's an underground system that will infiltrate some of the runoff.
And I
Now, it's not a major development because it's less than a quarter acre of impervious coverage, so we don't have to meet the recharge requirements that the state imposes on over a quarter an acre. But we are providing actually seepage, because it's an infiltration system in addition to being a detention facility.
Now, you did note on page 2 of the report that the total storage capacity of the subsurface detention facility is a little less than 5,000 cubic feet, 4,976 cubic feet.
Right.
Based on the question that Mr. Cohan asked with regards to how that detention facility can get to max capacity, can you say from your report, let's say if it's a 100-year storm, how long does it take for that detention facility to be filled to capacity based on the rates that you provided with a 100-year storm?
How long does it take to fill up? I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, obviously, I don't know that, but.
Would it be helpful just
So, I mean,
to answer
basically,
it?
Oh, sorry.
$2.73 hours?
2.73 hours for a 100-year storm.
Yeah.
Okay. Going back to the methodology that you used too, and looking at the calculations, it's actually not a complex formula of computation that is used here. I think if you have a good solid algebra skill set, you're able to follow along. Does this methodology assume that the rate of rainfall is uniform throughout a period of time? Basically, it's constant. Does it account for variations of rainfall during a period of time?
Yeah, well, we use the NJDEP rainfall intensity curves. So it's a type 3 curve that we use. And that's what's being modeled based on New Jersey. In this area, it's a type 3 storm.
And if you can help me as well as the board understand in the calculations within Appendix 1, where is that variation accounted for in the calculation?
Appendix 1.
Oh, is mic volume better? Sorry.
Okay, so Appendix 1, what was your question now?
where within Appendix 1, using the rational method, do you count for variations of rainfall rate during a period of time? Because it appears, based on the calculations that you have, that it assumes a uniform rainfall.
Well, Appendix 1 is just showing the peak runoffs. You have to look at the hydrographs to see the variations in the rainfall.
Mhm.
These are just, in Appendix 1 are just the peak runoffs.
Just peak runoffs?
Right. So we're reducing the peak runoffs to less than actually what's happening currently.
But it would take the hydrographs to actually determine variations of flow over time, or within,
Right.
sorry, within flows of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, obviously, the peak is the highest, so it would be
Okay.
the highest runoff would be the peak.
And does I noticed that in the plans, you also account for the planting of trees, vegetation of the sort. Does this also account for the added trees and vegetation on the property as well?
Yes. That's calculated within the runoff coefficients, which are shown in Appendix 2.
Okay.
You see the woodlands, heavy soil, lawns, heavy soil meaning worst-case scenario, it's not sand, it's more clay.
Okay.
And those are the runoff coefficients right here.
Now, through the exhibits that you have, can you explain to the board, when rain does hit the property, how does it make its way to the detention facility?
I'll pull up sheet 5. So, so you have, the impervious coverage will be all the runoff from the impervious area, which would be the pavement from the parking lot, and also the roof runoff will be directed to the seepage pit, or to the detention facility, which is also technically a seepage area. So the building itself, all the roof drains will be connected. The system is here under the parking lot, that rectangular system. So the roof drains will be connected into the system. And then the parking lot runoff, there's an inlet over here. There's also an inlet here in the corner. So any runoff in the parking lot will be tied into the detention facility. So you see these pipes here connecting from the inlets to the detention facility. The roof drains will also connect. We don't actually show the roof drain, because it could be connected anywhere from the building into the system, because the system is pretty big. The architect will have the downspouts, and they will connect into the detention facility. So none of the impervious runoff will not be contained into the detention facility.
And so for the water that is stored in the sub-detention facility, I noticed that in the letter that, as you noted in your testimony, that it would go into it would basically exit off into Larchmont Road. Can you just showcase how that looks like?
All right, so here's the detention facility, this rectangular area, which is 15 feet wide by 114 feet long by 3 feet deep. I mean, basically, they look like milk crates. It's 97% void ratio, so it's full volume. There's not much voids in there. So that'll flow out into an outlet structure, which you see these two manhole covers, and that's where you have your controlling structure, a weir, an orifice that controls the flow, and then it'll go out of the outlet structure to a manhole, to another manhole, and then drain and connect to the back of the inlet on Larchmont Road.
And if you can orientate me, that's basically near the, for lack of a better term, the intersection between Larchmont and Morris?
Yes, it's right here.
My follow-up question to that would be, as you have the proper controls to have that water go into that inlet, do we account for if there's a possibility, did we account for the capacity of the inlet itself at that intersection of Larchmont and Morris to understand what's the capacity of it and what's the risk of that to be going over capacity, in which then that then runs off?
Well, we didn't do a capacity analysis of the existing storm sewer system on Larchmont Road. We could do that. I mean, we would have to obtain some more information on the system, but we are actually reducing the flows of what's going there now. But we could provide that if that's needed.
And based on what you were saying, that with the grading of the area, is that basically any runoff would head toward northwest, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, the existing runoff is generally running towards Larchmont Road, like it is proposed. We haven't changed the drainage pattern after development. So basically, what's going there now, the same, just less actually is going there now to that inlet. But we didn't analyze the existing system that we're tying into.
And this is based on peak flows? This is based on peak flows, right?
Well, this is based on the outflows from the detention facility.
I just want to forward board members if they have any questions on their end, because I still do have a couple questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Ramo, thank you for your time. Could you just speak about the outside lighting that would go around the border of the property? In other words, would that interfere with the home on Larchmont with all those lights? How would that work?
So the lighting plan, which is sheet 6, shows the lighting and also the photometrics
Yes.
of the lighting. So basically, if you see this line here, this is the 0.5, I don't know if it's 0.5 or 0.3 here, let's see. 0.5 foot candle limit. So basically, the 0.5 foot candle limit is just about at the property line. And those lights are also going to be shielded. So technically, there's going to be back plates in there. So they're actually going to be shielded where you're not even going to get that 0.5.
So you're straight down?
Yeah.
Pretty much? Okay,
If you see there's a note on there, proposed lighting shall be shielded,
okay,
even though the photometrics technically show it if it wasn't actually shielded.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. Your detention system relies upon infiltration, is that correct?
It doesn't rely on infiltration, but we are providing infiltration.
Did you do soil pits out there? Did you take a look at the soils?
Yes, we did.
And are you indicating that you believe the soils are adequate for infiltration out there?
Yeah, we have the soils report, in the back of the drainage report. Okay, so I mean, it's not great soil, but I mean, it's somewhat pervious, so we will be able to infiltrate some into the ground. It's a K1 permeability class, if you're familiar with that.
Would you believe even with those soils, this system will perform appropriately?
Well, it's designed to actually fully evacuate, so if there was no infiltration, it's actually designed, those flows are based on no infiltration. So any infiltration we get will be a plus.
question related, we didn't really talk about that wall. I'm not a huge fan of walls right on the property line. I know it's largely decorative in a lot of locations. My concern is, do you believe you can build that wall and stay on the property, number one?
So yes, the answer to that is yes, we will keep the wall on the property.
Okay.
Let me just go to that sheet here.
So even during construction, there's gonna be nobody, anytime you're building a wall on a property line,
Well, it's a little off the property line,
it looks on the back like it's,
about a
Right
foot
on
off
the
the
property.
property line, I guess. So the wall is going to be, let's see. So it is a decorative block retaining wall, and this type of wall actually doesn't even require a foundation, so it's basically the weight of the block. And it's going to be less than 4 feet, so there won't be any three-dimensional webbing behind it. So the wall will be on our property.
do we know, because it is going to, there are places where the neighbors are gonna see an elevation of that wall, correct? The adjoining neighbors?
Well, the neighbors are actually up higher, so they're not going to see the wall.
So when you say top of wall, bottom of wall, you talk about the interior?
Yes.
Okay. So the wall is down from, so they're gonna see a cap, really? That's
Yeah,
all
they're not going to see the wall,
And
basically.
everything's down from there,
Right.
slopes down towards the lot. That's all I have right now.
Just to follow up on, I think a comment you made about the soil not being great, or I may be paraphrasing. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so we did soil testing, soil logs and permeability testing. So it's the permeability, we didn't hit any groundwater on the logs, so as far as maintaining the system 1 foot above the water table, which I believe there was one comment somewhere in the letter, we could provide that. So there's got to be a 1 foot separation between the water table and the bottom of the system. We didn't encounter any groundwater during the logs. The soil samples came back as a K1 material. So basically, you have a range of K0 to K5, K5 being, like Bermuda sand, basically, and K0 being really not permeable at all. So it's on the lower end of the permeability. But it's not, but again, the system isn't designed for infiltration, even though we're going to provide that, because it's an open system. But since it's not a major project, it's not required to have infiltration.
So you said, so the classification is K1, as you said?
K1 material, yeah.
K1 material. So based on the classification system, does that also infer in terms of susceptibility to erosion, magnitude of erosion over time? Can you elaborate on the potential?
That's
of
just the
erosion?
permeability rate. That's
Permeability.
Yeah, it's permeability. It has nothing to do with erosion.
Mr. Chairman, one more question.
Yes, please.
Regarding the maintenance of the detention system, since we're relying heavily upon that, life expectancy and maintenance requirements associated with it, solely it's 100% underground, accessibility is limited. What do you anticipate system with proper maintenance lasts for?
Well, we're going to provide a maintenance and operation and maintenance manual. That was one of the comments, so how to maintain the system. I mean, there's observation ports in the corners of the system where, they can maintain it, vacuum it out if there's any sediment that gets in there. So it'll be maintained, and we'll provide a manual for that.
And you think with proper maintenance, this has a life expectancy of?
Oh, I mean, it could last for 30, 40 years, I would think.
Thank you.
It's designed for H20 loading, so it's designed for truck loading, so it should last, quite a long time.
Any other questions from board members? All right, you're stuck with me a little bit for
What's
a
that?
couple more questions.
Okay.
I noticed in the letter from Colliers, specifically page 2, essentially the second paragraph, that there's a transfer from overhead to buried electrical and telephone wiring between utility poles 64757 UN and 63680 UN. In the exhibits, can you showcase basically where those utility poles are and basically how they'll be connected through the underground wiring?
I think the fire.
Yeah, we have another witness, actually, if we needed to, that would address the
Because
fire
that gets involved in
department.
the fire issues, I assume.
Okay. So it's not one of the other four witnesses?
No, I wasn't sure whether specific questions would come up. Because
Okay.
again, we've indicated we have no problem addressing any of the fire department comments.
Got it. Okay, all right. I don't have any other questions on this board members. Mr. Denave? Okay, questions from the public? Yes.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Stuart Lieberman. I represent the Larchmont State Civic Association. And good evening, sir. I have a few questions for you. I do want to know whether or not you are agreeing to put the utilities underground, because that was one of the comments. Are you agreeing to do that?
We have a separate expert that'll address that.
Okay, but the engineer can't say yes or no? I mean, he's the engineer.
We have another witness who will address that.
Okay, all right. In terms of the stormwater system, I have a few questions for you that I just want to go over. First of all, the engineer had indicated that you need to demonstrate 1 foot of separation between the mean high water table and the bottom of the basin. Do you have any data that supports that?
Yes.
And where is that, and when has that been provided?
Well, there's a drainage report. Let me just go into that. Stormwater management report. So, in the back of that report, you'll see there's soil logs. Let's see, soil log 1 and so basically both the logs, soil log 1 was down 132 feet. We didn't get any indications of a seasonal high water table. So based on the state standards, if you don't hit water, you consider the bottom of the excavation as the seasonal high water table. So we're probably about 4 feet above it, to be honest with you.
Well, when was that done? Was that done during a drought? We've had very little rain this year. When was this done? What was the date that this was done?
Well, I mean, we've done a lot of soil logs out there because this project's been going on for 15 years.
What are the dates of the data that you presented in this report?
Well, this one was actually done in 2010, this log.
Do you have any, so what you're relying on to show 1 foot of separation is data relating to your soil report?
Mr. Lieberman,
That's what you're relying on?
Mr. Lieberman, just make
Yes.
sure
Yeah.
you speak into the mic.
Oh, sorry
Yeah.
about that, Dave.
We just want to make sure you're on the record.
I appreciate it. So you don't have any independent report showing the 1 foot separation? You're relying on your soils analysis report, is that correct?
Well, yeah, that's what determines the separation, because you know where the water table is, and the system has to be 1 foot above it.
Did anybody from the municipality observe your work when you were determining?
No,
the
it's not
level?
required. I'm a professional engineer, I actually did it myself.
You indicated that there was a runoff coefficient that you relied upon. What was the coefficient that you relied upon, and how did you determine which coefficient to rely on?
Well, it's a weighted coefficient. So it's based on, we'll go see if I can find that chart real quick.
excuse me, the board, I need to look here. I don't mean to turn my back to you, but I just need to see the screen, so please forgive me. Thank you.
So these are the runoff coefficients. Asphalt pavement is .99. So the higher the number, the more runoff you have. Roofs is .99, concrete is .99, brick is .99, lawn is .51.
What percentage of the site did you classify as lawn as compared to the others? In other words, and with the DEP regulations, don't they have, with the DEP resignations, don't they have a classification such as meadow and those kinds? Isn't that what the DEP uses when they do this?
Well, this is the rational method. I mean, there's other methods you can use. I mean, you know, we show lawns, lawn area. Runoff coefficient is .51, which is actually a little bit higher than what you would normally use. So these numbers are actually a little bit on the high side. As far
But
as
these
runoff
aren't the
coefficients.
DEP determinations, right? When
They are.
DEP uses this, don't they have classifications such as meadow? I know it's one of them, and there are a few others like that, right? Is
Yeah.
that the chart you took from? Because I don't.
Yeah, actually, we did. Let's see if it's in the back of the report here.
Mr. Lieberman, if you need to just take the mic out and have it with you in case you have questions as you're looking at the screen, you're feel free to do that.
I appreciate it, thank you.
I mean,
I feel like
this-
Donahue, if you remember. Yes,
This is a chart here that show, and again, these are, the numbers that we used are actually higher than what I would normally actually use on a project that's not a major development, but, so we got when you're talking about meadow, you're talking about meadow, good condition, you have runoff coefficients of .44 for hydrologic soil group C. I mean, we're using .51, so we're actually higher.
but what was your hydrologic soil group? Your soils are pretty poor over there, aren't they?
Again, it's a different method as far as the hydrologic soil group, so we didn't use CN numbers. But the runoff coefficients that we use are .99. You can't get any higher than that.
What percentage of the property did you classify as lawn as compared to brick and the other designations?
Hold on, I gotta go back. Okay, so for the proposed conditions, 13,391 square feet of lawn.
And that was in the pre-development state, is that correct?
So post-development.
I see. And
Pre-development is, pre-development is 17,159 of woodland and 4,298 of lawn area. So obviously that's
What-
reduced because we're putting.
can you go back to the pre-development, please?
Yeah.
So you're saying that, so what's there right now is a house, right? There's a 1.5-story house there, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And then
So you got roof.
much
area.
of the rest is lawn, right? Isn't much of the rest of that property currently lawn?
Yeah, it's predominantly woodlands and lawn.
But you have it designated as mostly woodlands with heavy soil, and then lawns, it's about, what, a quarter of it being lawns. Is that really what it is right now? Is it really just a quarter lawn and almost 4 times that woodland? Is that what you're saying? That's there right now? Because that affects the pre-development numbers, which show, well, what you really need to be post-development. Is that really what it is? Is it really 1/4 lawn and 4 times that woodland right now?
Yeah. And actually, the runoff coefficients are they're pretty close, actually, so.
Well, I know, but
It's not going to really affect the calculation so much.
I know,
But
but-
yes, that's what it is.
But a lot of times, people finagle those numbers in order for it to show
So.
a
so-
lower burden post-development than
So you're
pre-development.
trying to say there's more lawn than what we're showing?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. It seems to me
Well,
there
if
is.
there's more lawn, then that helps us. That means there's more pre-development runoff. Because the runoff for lawn is actually higher than for woodland.
You talked about the types of soils and the infiltration. When you talked about the soils, you said you complied with the DEP in terms of rainfall. Do you remember you said that? In
No, we
the
use the
design of your system, you said you complied with what the DEP requires in terms of rainfall assessment
Well, we use the NJDEP runoff curves, yes,
for rainfall.
for rainfall, yeah.
But you know that DEP, about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, changed the requirements, so now rainfall has to envision the next 100 years. Did you do that?
Well, we designed it for a 100-year storm.
do you understand that DEP now requires that anyone who designs a stormwater system the input for rainfall has to be based on a prediction of what rainfall volume is going to be for over 100 years? Do you understand that?
Yeah, I don't quite understand exactly what you're asking, but,
Did you do that?
well, it's designed for a 100-year storm system based on the DEP standards.
A 100-year storm system is something different.
100-year storm runoff, right?
That's right. But we've had to design systems for 100-year, 2-year, 50 for years. That's not new. But what is new is that the input for rain has to envision rain over the next 100 years. Isn't that accurate?
It's based on the current rainfall data.
Right. So you did not design this for predictions of rainfall volume over the next 100 years, even though that's what DEP now requires, did you?
We designed it based on the current standards.
Okay.
of the
In
DEP.
terms of,
don't know
I
what
understand, in
100
terms
is.
of maintenance, this whole system is underground. You're not going to see, there's just 2 manholes or 3, and that's all you're going to see. Everything else is under that project, isn't that correct?
It's an underground system.
Right.
yes.
Why didn't you have an above-ground system, like most
Well, the
people have?
site's
Why'd
not
you put
con-
it underground?
The site's not
First of all,
conducive.
Excuse me a second. You're saying by most, you can't interject your own thoughts on that. He testified to, you said as most people.
They do.
No, you're not an expert. You have to limit your questions to factual questions to this
Okay.
witness.
Okay. You'd
The
agree with...
site's, the site's not conducive to a detention basin, above-ground basin.
Because there's not enough room for it the way the site is designed, right?
Well, there's not enough room, that's why you put it underground.
So this system is going to be underground, and who is going to be responsible for maintaining this?
The owner.
I see. And what is this owner going to have to do, and how much is this owner going to have to spend in order to maintain the system on an annual basis?
Well, that'll be incorporated into the operation and maintenance manual that we prepare.
I understand that, but
And that's based on the size of the system, how frequently it has to be cleaned out and everything else.
you'd agree with me that if the system isn't properly maintained, it's going to fail, right?
Well, everything needs to be maintained.
Right. So what are you expecting this owner to do in order to maintain this system that's completely underground? What are you expecting?
Well, again, that'll be outlined in the operation and maintenance manual.
Do you understand that if the system fails, it's up to, under the MS4 permit, the municipality will have to take responsibility for it? Do you understand that?
Every town is a little bit different on that aspect of it.
Do you understand that MS4 permits are standard? They're federal permits delegated to the states, and every municipality in the state of New Jersey has one? Do you understand that?
I don't understand your questioning of that.
So-
The owner is going to maintain the system, not the city.
I see. But you can't tell this board what it will take in order to maintain this completely underground system. You're not in a position to tell the board right now?
Well, that's going to be part of the operation and maintenance manual.
Was a mounting analysis done for the system?
No mounting analysis, no.
Why wasn't what is a mounting analysis?
That's just to analyze the water as it seeps into the ground outward and if it affects any adjacent
Well,
foundations.
you've indicated that the system has infiltration associated with it, although you acknowledge that the soils are largely not conducive to infiltration, correct?
That's correct.
So if the soils aren't conducive to infiltration, but the system allows for infiltration, what will happen to the water if it can't be infiltrated? Where's it going to go?
Well, it's going to drain out through the outlet structure.
Or is it going to cause localized flooding because it wants to infiltrate but it can't go anywhere?
No, it's going to be It's designed for no infiltration. It's going to empty out after each storm.
No, it's designed, you indicated that the design will allow for infiltration, but
It'll
you're not
allow
depending,
for it,
wait, hold on, let me finish, but you're not depending on it.
That's right.
In order to
It's
meet
not an
your-
infiltration system, per se.
How about the system has, the system is designed so that the water, after it's released, at whatever rate you're releasing at it, is going to end up in Larchmont Avenue, correct? In an inlet.
Yeah.
But you haven't done any work to determine the capacity of that inlet, or if it's going to be able to accept that water in a, say, 50-year or 100-year storm. You can't testify under oath that it can accept it right now, can you?
We did not analyze the storm source system.
But if it doesn't accept it, and if the system isn't robust enough so that inlet can accept it, you're going to have flooding all over Larchmont Avenue, aren't you?
No, if the analysis shows, we'll have to upgrade the system.
Well, we're here
But right
tonight.
now, like I said, we're actually reducing the flows.
Yeah.
So if there's a problem now, then yes, there would be a problem. But if
Right.
there's no problem now with the system, there wouldn't be a problem.
But the inlet on Larchmont Avenue is an integral part of this system, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you don't know whether or not it can accept the water flows, do you? Right now, you don't know.
We did not analyze the downstream storm source system.
Okay, in terms of peak flow rates, you read the Collier Engineering report, right?
Yeah.
And you read where the engineer indicated that you were not, that your peak flow rates post-development were higher than pre-development, and he indicated that that was inconsistent with the ordinances. That's what he wrote, right?
Yeah, that's incorrect.
And you say it's incorrect. Can you explain how it is that the two of you engineers have such a different understanding as to whether or not the peak flow rates are satisfied? Do you have an understanding of where's the confusion?
I have no idea. I didn't make the comment.
Mm-hmm.
All I can tell you is that we're reducing the flows based on the report.
So, any of the comments by the fire chief, you don't want me to ask now because you've got somebody else? Okay, and you're going to be producing that witness, because if not, I'm going to ask him, but you're producing him. All right, that's fine, that's fine. Now, in terms of parking on this site, as I understand it, this site is situated between two very busy roads, right?
He's not, he hasn't testified to that, he's not a traffic
Mhm.
engineer. He's not a traffic engineer.
Do you know whether they're busy?
Well, Morris Avenue obviously is a busy road,
And how about Larchmont Avenue?
less busy.
Okay. Now my question for you is this. You've designed this so that there are, if I recall, 20 parking spots, or it might be 21. I think it's 20 because you took a credit for one, right?
Yes, we took
Okay.
credit for electric vehicle.
And there are, how many units? 11 units or 13 units? I can't remember.
11.
11 units. So if it's 11 units and you've got 20 parking spots, that's not quite 2 spots per unit, correct?
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
and I understand that your position is that meets the local ordinance, so I'm not going to ask you about that. Where are the guests going to park?
Sir, you're a well-seasoned attorney. You know that the figures under the ordinance and under RSIS account for guest parking. Is that true?
Well, I want to know in real life, this RSIS is great. Where do you anticipate the guests are going to park?
Again, the parking's based on the RSIS standards.
And our professional planner will cover that, but that's beyond the scope of his direct
The
testimony.
project that you designed has no green space, right? It's all paved, right?
No, there's quite a bit of green space.
Well, not accessible by the unit, by the people that are going to live there.
Well, sure, I mean, they can go outside, I guess. And- I mean, when you say
The-
green space, I mean, there's lawns and landscaping.
The trash is outside? Trash is going to be collected outside, is that correct?
There's a trash enclosure outside, that's
I
correct.
see, I see. So, in other words, and what's it going to be? You're going to have dumpsters outside, or what are you going to have
It's
outside?
going to be an enclosed, screened trash enclosure area.
Is that inside the covered area, or is it outside of the covered area?
No, it's outside the covered area. It's over here.
So you expect the unit owners to go outside Whenever they have to take their trash out, they're going to have to go outside. Is that right?
Yeah.
But you couldn't design so that they could get inside, huh? Why couldn't they go inside? Why do you have to do this to the residents?
I'm not doing anything to the residents. You could ask the architect that, but it's a very short distance from the entrance to the building to the trash enclosure.
The trees, were you responsible for designing the trees, or did somebody else do that? The vegetation?
No, we did that.
You did that? Are the trees going to have leaves all year round, or what kind of plantings are you doing?
Well, I mean, the shade trees along Morris Avenue and Larchmont are going to be deciduous trees. The flowering trees are going to be deciduous, but the screening trees along the property lines are going to be evergreen trees. So they will have leaves all year round.
I want to go back. You indicated that the elevation of the neighbors is higher than the elevation of the project. Isn't that what you said?
Yes.
Can you go back to, I think it was sheet 5, where you had some elevations? I'm sorry, everybody. I have to turn my back to you. Please forgive me. And then I have to read. Okay. Let's go back to this. Can you go, yeah, like, oh, yeah.
So
What shows, the wall, the solid wall is that dotted line, is that correct?
solid line. The dotted line is a fence on top of the wall.
That's what I meant. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, the fence is, okay, fine.
This is the wall.
And the elevation of that fence is what, as depicted by this drawing?
The elevation of the fence
Yes,
or the wall?
the elevation of the wall, what is that?
Well, the elevation of the wall, for instance, in this corner here, which is the highest point, the top of wall is 106.5, bottom wall 104.5, and the parking lot's at 99.
And what,
So you're about 6.5 feet above the parking lot, the adjacent property. So the site is lower than the adjacent property. This is all cut.
is it uniformly lower than the adjacent property, or does that change as you move to the left?
Well, it changes, but the whole site is lower than the adjacent property.
How much lower is it as you move to the left?
Well, I mean, as we head towards Larchmont Road,
Right.
I mean, you're actually pretty much the same over here.
That's right. You're about the same, so you're not really lower over there, are you?
Well, a little lower, but, you're 100 and comes down to that 98 here.
So when you said when you stated the height difference, that was really predominantly to the right as we look at this drawing, but not reflective of conditions to the left as we look at the drawing. Isn't that correct?
Well, it's much more cut as you go into the back of the lot than it is in the front.
So I'm correct.
Obviously, the front, we have to meet the existing grade. So on Larchmont, we basically are the same elevation. But where the parking starts, we're actually lower than the adjacent properties.
Right, some parts of it you're lower and some parts you're not.
Well, where the parking lot is totally under the adjacent property.
How thick will the vegetation be? In other words, in terms of providing sound barrier and a light barrier, or sound barrier and a visual barrier, how thick is the vegetative buffer that you're proposing?
So there's going to be screening type trees planted 5 feet on center. Those are evergreen trees. So they're pretty dense. They're planted along the property line here and all the way to almost Morris Avenue.
What size trees are you proposing to install?
I believe they're going to be 6 feet high. Let me see if I can. 6 to 7 feet high?
You're installing 6 feet high trees.
Yeah, to start out with. And
Yeah.
obviously they're going to grow.
Okay, and how many years will it take for them to grow where there is a complete visual and sound buffer? How many years do you
Well, the
anticipate
6 to
that's
7
going to
feet
take?
gives you a sound buffer. That's why we propose 6 to 7 feet.
You're telling me that 6 feet trees actually are expansive enough and developed enough to provide a sound buffer?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Are there any studies that say that, or is that just based on your experience?
Based on my experience.
Because those seem like very small trees.
No, they're 6 to 7 feet is pretty high for an initial planting.
Let me see if I have any other questions.
And plus, they're going to be planted uphill, too, so you're also a couple feet higher than the parking lot.
Thank you, thank you. Can you go to the, I don't know where it is now, because some of what I'm seeing here is a little different than what I initially saw, but do you have that architectural drawing that shows the height? I didn't see you show it today, but
I'm not the architect, so.
I know you're not the architect, but the,
Yeah, I don't have the drawing. The architect will have that.
well, let me ask you a question. Well, okay, you have got the architect coming?
Yeah.
Okay, and will he show, I have a question about the height issue. So you're not prepared to testify about the height? It's the architect that'll ask about the height?
Well, in general, I could tell you the height of the building is 35 feet, 5 inches. But the architect can go into more detail with that.
What is the, under the local code, what is the maximum height that's allowed in that zone? Isn't it 35 feet?
Or 34 feet, 5 inches is what the architect is proposing.
That's what I thought.
35 feet is required. 34 feet,
35
5 inches is the proposal.
35 feet's the maximum that's allowed in the zone.
Right.
Is the parapet included in that measurement?
I don't know if, I don't think so, actually. The architect will answer that question.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
Right, I don't believe so either, and that was my question. All right.
It's normally not, but the architect will testify to that.
Well, I noticed that it was an omitted figure. When I looked at the architectural number, I saw the different figures, and there was a missing figure for the parapet, and that's why I was asking. But I'll ask the architect about that. All right, at this time, I don't have any other questions, and I thank everybody for your courtesy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the public? No, I understand that, Mr. Lieberman, you're speaking on behalf of the association.
I am.
So no association members are going up to ask questions on their own accord. However, if you're not a member of the association, then,
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Thank you.
okay.
I'm going to sit down. It's going to take me an hour to get there, but I'm going to sit down.
Okay.
Thank you.
So for a lack of a better word, if there are members of the public that are not members of the Larchmont Association and has a question,
Tony? Yes, please. Tony, yeah, sure. Is there any way I can connect this? We have some photographs we'd like to just demonstrate some issues in regards to stormwater.
Mr. Pasquale?
Now, so you're not a member of the Larchmont Association?
Oh, I am, absolutely.
Then this is not permissible?
Let me run over it with you real quick. You can go over it with him.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I have a 2-minute break so I can see what the witness wants to show, and then perhaps I'll present it? Is that okay?
Sure, just 2 minutes.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
You know what, to give some time, the board will recess for 5 minutes, and we will return in 5 minutes. All right? Thank you. 8:36.
Hey, Tony, how you doing? I'm going to call you as a witness. Okay. All right?
Okay, so Tony, what I do is, Stuart? Okay, I'm sorry.
okay? That's the way we do it. Thanks.
I'm sure both of you know that if or after 10 o'clock, so if we do at 10 o'clock, if there's still more to be heard, I'll have to continue to the next year.
I don't know, whatever your rules are, they are. I'm a guest here. That's all. You know, everybody has their own rules, and I respect that.
You know, everyone has to take a look at how that. You know, if you have to hear it, it's already prepare Mr. Gilberty to come back with any other information or anything that we want to make sure.
I appreciate that, thank you. What time is it?
It's already.
Thanks a lot. That's true, that's true. Well, if it was, I'd be drinking, right? Okay, they didn't say that. Okay, thank you. Well, it always is. That's the way it is. They could, they case that way. I'll be right back. Yeah, no problem.
Good, good. You want to see pictures?
Let's do Tony.
Yeah, I'll show that. I measure. Yeah, I know. Right, I know.
I got it. Let's see.
We'll see. No, you gotta place that.
My big problem is that.
Oh, really? Oh, boy. And I'm on jury. Really?
They could have, because my associate saw the calendar and against the trial, she didn't say.
Oh, I think you gotta do something. I think I gotta kill him. You gotta kill him. Gotta do something. So they're taking the recess. Okay. Yeah. That's okay. Either way, doesn't matter. I did not. I wasn't sure. But you know what? I wanted to do it that day. I said, what did you say? I tell him. But you think so too? I didn't think that. I thought it was yeah, which is amazing to me. Okay, so how are we going to...
Planning board is returning from recess. It is 8:41. I just want to put in the record, and this is just longstanding rules of the planning board, that the planning board basically hears testimony until 10 o'clock. However, if we do not go through all of our witnesses tonight, then the hearing continues at the next meeting, which I do believe is January 23rd. And we will continue the process until every question is heard and answered, and every opinion is voiced before a decision is rendered on the application. So as long as how many testimonies, how many witnesses, how many hearings, we will get through it. We'll probably not get through it tonight because we are approaching 10 o'clock within a matter of an hour and 20 minutes. But I just wanted to let that be known. I do know that right before the recess, I know, Mr. Lieberman, you had to caucus with some of your association members. If this is with regards to calling them as a witness, what we'll have to do is Mr. Hale will go through his witnesses, and then we will then offer the ability for you to call any appropriate witnesses. Again, you know, anyone who would want from the association to be a witness or to answer questions, we would prefer you to basically regulate that based on your discretion.
That's fine, thank you very much. And that's what I anticipated,
Okay.
so I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. I know we had Mr. Ramo, right?
Yes, did you want it back, or?
Yeah, I think I just had
Mark?
probably like 2 or 3 more questions, just
No
to
problem.
follow up based on what we've heard so far. Mr. Ramo, thank you for bearing with us.
Sure.
So there was a previous question that I asked with regards to the classification of the soil, and that was more of the permeability of the soil and the determinant of the runoff coefficients. I think where I was trying to get at with my question as well is that, is there any correlation of runoff coefficients or the classifications with basically the susceptibility of such soil to erosion? Or is there something else that is done to examine that?
Well, there shouldn't be any erosion. I mean, the site that's going to, any areas that are going to be disturbed are going to be seeded or sodded. So you're not going to have any surface erosion. All the drainage is going to be run through conduits, so you're not going to have any outflow of runoff onto the surface. So it's going to be through conduits and connect to the existing system.
But does the report do any testing on the the risk of erosion or the extent of the, the possibility of erosion? I know in your plan you submitted, I think, a soil erosion and sediment
Yeah,
control plan.
there's a soil erosion and setup control plan that's prepared, and that'll be reviewed and approved by the local SCD.
Is
So
there-
they will look for those issues as far as erosion goes. I mean, there's,
That they would look for the issues? That there's
yeah, of
no-
course. I mean, they have to issue the certification. There's certain seeding requirements that the soil erosion district requires, to prevent erosion.
But the plan doesn't establish the current condition or the extent of the susceptibility or the vulnerability of erosion or what that could look like.
Well, the plan, like I said, the landscaping plan shows the area to be all stabilized with grass and landscaping, so there shouldn't be any erosion.
My next question, and this kind of brings it back to full circle with regards to stormwater management, flooding, and things of that nature. And from my recollection of the general area itself, is there a flood zone deemed by FEMA within a 200 feet or a 300 feet radius of the property?
I didn't review the FEMA maps for the project, so I can't say yes or no on that.
Because
But I know the property itself is not in a flood zone.
Because ladies and gentlemen, please. Because my understanding is that there is property within that general area, and I think one area in particular is the church that you cited that is adjacent, that's close to the property, that's within that flood zone. No, that's in that flood zone. And I do believe that there are further out properties northwest of the property that you've mentioned that's also in the flood zone. Are you aware of that?
Like I said, I didn't review the FEMA maps. I know the property itself is not in the flood zone.
Okay. All right. I think I'm done with my questions with Mr. Ramo. Thank you very much, Mr.
Okay,
Ramo.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, now I'd like to call upon Mark Marion, our architect.
Mr. Marion, would you state your name and spell your last name for us?
Mark with a C, Marion, M-A-R-I-O-N.
And will you raise your right hand and you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And Mr. Marion, if you could please give the board, as Mr. Ramo did, the benefit of your work, educational experience, area of expertise, licenses you hold, and whether you've been accepted as a professional architect before the boards or courts of the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, I'm a registered architect.
And you may have to go right into that mic a little bit there.
Right. I'm a registered architect since 1989. I've been self-employed since '91. I've been operating out of my current location in Raritan since '97. My license is current and in good standing. I give an expert testimony in union, but I think it was probably in '97. It was a long time ago. And I've been before a couple dozen boards, been accepted as an expert witness.
The board stipulates.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, Mr. Marion, if you could please take us through the floor plans and elevations for the project. And as I said before, if there's exhibits or plans that were not submitted as part of the package, we'd have to mark those, but ones that were previously submitted, just identify the date and the page.
Okay. Let's see how this works. Okay, cool. This plan is dated, it's revised 8/26/24. We raised the building and we added a sprinkler note, so I'm not too sure what your guys are looking at. But I believe that's the drawing that
Yeah.
was submitted. So we're proposing a 3-story multifamily building, which you already know, with 11 residential units. The building is located within the buildable envelope. It complies with all the setbacks and building height, building coverage, and density requirements of the NC zone. The building's about 109 feet wide and 68 feet deep. And there will be some parking underneath the building. The 11 units will be comprised of 3 one-bedrooms and 8 two-bedrooms. The one-bedroom units are about 660 square feet, and the 2 bedrooms are all about 1,600 square feet. At the ground level, let's see if we can do this. The ground level, there's access from the parking lot into a lobby, and there are 3 apartments across the front of the building to Morris Avenue. Each of those apartments has a single bedroom, a bathroom, and a living area, some walk-in closets, some storage. And the building is serviced by an elevator, there's some utility areas, and there's a fire stair and a mailroom on the ground floor. There's the main entrance is under the building, off the parking area. There is an emergency exit that goes out the front of the building. It's not meant to be, it's just for emergencies. We have to have 2 exits, and that will comply, but it's not meant to be a main entrance. There's no walkways to it. It's just for exiting. Going upstairs, the second and third floors are basically identical. Let's see if we can do this. And it's comprised of 4 units on each floor, basically 1 in each corner. Each of these 2-bedroom units has 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen and living area, and again, storage and utility area. The elevator goes to all 3 floors, and the fire stair also goes. There's some talk later, we are planning for the stairs to get to the roof, so the fire stair will provide access to the roof. And the building does comply with the building height, it's under 35 feet to the top of the roof. We are allowed 3-foot parapets per the township ordinance, and we're also allowed to have a stair bulkhead as long as it's under 10% per your ordinance. That gets us onto the roof, or gets emergency people onto the roof. The building and the covered parking area will be fully sprinklered per the building code. The exteriors is a mix of wood siding and smooth synthetic panels with window punctures and kind of a playful massing of the 2 different finishes. Like I said before, it's a flat roof with parapets. We're going to have the mechanical units, small residential style mechanical units for each unit on the roof. They'll be properly screened and won't be visible from the road. And we're providing access to the roof through the stairwell. And like I stated, the building complies with all the setbacks, building height, storage, number of units, and density requirements of the NC zone.
And I believe you also have a rendering.
Yes. Let's see if I can find that. So this is from the Larchmont, really the corner. So this main face is facing Larchmont. You can see the driveway coming in off the left.
So this is a new exhibit. We ask that be marked as A2.
Mr. Chair, can I get the date of this exhibit, please?
Mr. Hale, Mr. Marion, if you want to provide the date for that?
I didn't prepare this, so I would just put today's date.
Yeah, we can mark it as
I
today's
mean,
date.
my only problem is it has to be 10 days before the hearing.
Not exhibits, you know that.
Was that?
Exhibits do not have to be presented 10 days ahead.
Well,
Illustrative exhibits can be
This is-
submitted on the night of a
This
hearing.
is evidence that you're asking the board to evaluate.
This is just,
right? That's from the architect.
So it doesn't impact the variances or anything associated with the application.
I object to this. This
No,
should have been
you can
10 days
object to it.
before, in my opinion. It's evidence. You're asking the board to rely on it and to evaluate it in its decision.
Objection.
Mr. Lieberman, we'll allow it just because it has been a precedent that we have allowed this in the past, and it's just precedents that we have allowed, so.
Yeah.
But again, you will have the ability to ask your questions and scrutinize the application and the architect appropriately.
And this is a view from the Larchmont side. It shows the way the cars can access underneath the building.
And from review, I don't think there were any issues raised in the Collier's review related to architecture. So, I have no further questions of Mr. Marion at this time.
Questions from the board? Mr. Kine?
Yes, thank you. I've forgotten your name, I'm sorry.
It's Mark.
Mark Marion.
Marion, Mr. Marion. The windows, as in the illustration, appear to be casement windows, is that correct?
Yes.
So, is there means of egress out of each of these units except for the main entrance door?
There's, each bedroom has an egress, operable egress window in it,
Each bedroom?
each bedroom.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then the only other question I have about the architectural plans is that the three single, one-bedroom units seem to be awfully small. I mean, 700 square feet or smaller, in the case of the one unit. And I've stayed in hotel rooms that are that size. It doesn't appear to be big enough to be an apartment for somebody to live in permanently.
It's appropriate for a lot of what bedrooms that we have seen, yes. And,
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Engineer?
Just one question. The elevation of that first floor is, am I reading, I got a small copy of the plan, 98.5?
don't know that I have the
98.25.
elevation on my drawings.
I'm looking at, I guess it's Mr. Ramos.
Yeah, I don't have
Plan.
Mr. Remo's
Mark's plan.
plans, but yeah.
Question, here, you can come to this one.
I know we raised the second floor up to 12 foot to provide proper clearance underneath the building to satisfy the fire official. I know that.
Right. Yeah, my question, I guess, just winds up being, if it's 98.25 is the first floor elevation, which indicates on your plan, I think there's some elevations in that parking lot that are even or higher than what should be taken a look at. Right, I'm a little concerned that we got that much water that's coming in the building. So it's something I think we need to take a little bit.
Yeah, I don't believe that's the case. I mean, I could look at the grading
I-
plan, but
It's my understanding that most of the parking lot was lower than the building, finished floor. That was
So I just want to double check those numbers.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it tonight, but
That's,
I think we'll want to make sure
That's
we have
what I
those,
remember.
those numbers right.
Mr. Marion, thank you for being here tonight.
thanks for having me.
A ladder truck will fit underneath that overhang
The 12-foot clearance was a request of...
by the fire official?
Yes,
Captain Guzman? Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
So that's what we provided. Originally, it was 11, and we
Good.
changed to 12 per his request.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Just had a few questions on my end. You didn't mention a roof in the plans, and this is just not to be facetious, but I really don't see a roof. Can you explain more about how the roof looks like?
It's a flat roof, or no roofs are actually flat, they're just low-pitched. And there can be roofs drain the water off the outside edges or have internal roof drains. So we haven't determined which way that's going to go, but there are some parapets that stick above the roof and wrap around to try and change it up the massing. And the parapets will offer some shielding too. There'll be probably, there's 11 units, so there'll be 11 condensers on the roof, plus probably one for the building in general. So 12 small condensers. They don't need large condensers for these small units. Each will have their own.
So I noticed that you mentioned about draining, and so right now there are no plans firmed up yet in terms of what the appropriate location of the drainages are within the roof, like no green roof, no like...
No. There's no access to the roof planned for any tenants, and it's not necessarily a green roof. Usually the roofs nowadays are light colored to reflect, and it's common a roof like this would have multiple roof drains and leaders that lead down through the building and get into the drainage system.
Okay. Just out of curiosity with the style of the building itself, how does that conform to kind of the general area, neighboring buildings, things of that nature?
There's a pretty strong mix. There's some residential units to the southeast, I believe. There's some, like not too far, the corner of Sprague, or I'm not exactly, don't remember the name of the road.
Spruce?
Spruce, thank you. There's a very modern three-story building there. It's quite much bigger than this, about twice as big as this building. Across the street are some very large brick buildings. And so the neighborhood has a bunch of, it's kind of like a mixed, there's a church, one over, I think, northwest, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of a traditional church, it looked like to my, and there's right across the street is I believe, a doctor's office, it looks like, and that's somewhat contemporary. So there's a mix of building types, and obviously some of the buildings are older along Morris Avenue.
Those are my questions so far. Any other questions from board members? Mr. Nanabe, are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Questions from the public?
Thank you.
Mr. Lieberman?
Thank you. Good evening, sir. Just a few questions to clarify, at least in my mind. On the parapet, is there a state requirement or a general architectural requirement that parapets be 3.5 feet, not 3 feet?
No, there are some times for fire, there are requirements for parapets of adjacent units and like townhouses and things like that.
Okay.
But there is supposed to be shielding on a roof if mechanical equipment is within a certain distance of the edge for protection of workers. But this roof is there's plenty of room to keep the mechanical equipment away from the edge of the building.
And the parapet was not included in the height, is that correct?
Yes, it's in the ordinance that it doesn't have to be. It's excluded, and you're allowed to go 3 feet higher than somewhere in here I have the ordinance.
If you'd be so kind just to read that ordinance if you have it.
Sure.
For my edification. Thank you.
It's section 170-1214, height exceptions. C, nothing in this chapter shall prevent the erection above the height limitation of a parapet wall or a cornice extending above such height limit not more than 3 feet.
Sounds like that's what it says. And
Yeah.
thank you, I appreciate it. And in
Okay.
terms of the height of the roof, at the highest pitch, obviously it's not exactly flat, how high does it go?
It's, I think we've 34 foot 5 inches.
Well, the reason I'm asking is you're,
Take the microphone, I'll do it.
thank you.
think if we
Just
go-
help me if you could if you could just back that out a little bit.
I think you're talking about this dimension right there.
Yeah, what I'm trying to look at is when you add these dimensions, yeah, that 34.5 does that go to the roof? Is that the roof? What is that? That's,
the line of the roof, yeah, and the parapet stick up high.
but my question is, what is the highest pitch of the roof? In other words, how high is the highest pitch of the roof?
We'll be under 35 feet, we'll be 36.
Well, do you have any details that shows that?
No, I don't, it's not been designed precisely yet, we still have to get approval.
But you're talking inches. If it's over that, you realize you need a variance.
Yes.
But you don't have any detail to show the board that you're under it.
I'm extremely confident we can get a roof to work under that height.
Ah, well, it would have been better if you had a drawing that showed it, I think, but it's up to the board. But I think you need a drawing that shows it, but I don't have any other questions.
And
Thank you,
To
board.
answer your question, the line of the average grade of 99, I believe that was the average grade that was provided by Mark Reno.
Well, when I asked him, he said that you were the person I had to talk to about it.
Yeah, well, you were talking about the parapet, and that's why I'm here.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Just for formality's sake, are there any other questions from the public that are not members of the Larchmont Association? Okay. Hearing none, I think we could progress to the next witness.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Mark. I'd now like to call upon Jerry Naglis. I didn't mention him before. I wasn't sure if we needed to address the fire, but I guess they did want that address, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Maples, would you just state your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Gerard Nalis, N-A-Y-L-I-S.
And Mr. Nalis, do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Mr. Nalis, if you could please give the board and the public the benefit of your work, educational experience, area of expertise that you plan to testify this evening on.
Certainly, I have an associate's degree in applied science from Bergen Community College. I have a bachelor of science degree from Jersey City State College, also in fire science. I have a master's in administrative science from Fairleigh Dickinson University. Additionally, I have an associate in risk management designation from the Insurance Institute of America, and I took coursework at Seton Hall University to complete that designation. Additionally, I've taken graduate courses at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. Additionally, I have certifications from the New Jersey Division of Fire Safety as a Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, Fire Officer 2, Fire Investigator, live burn fire instructor, drill ground instructor. Should I continue?
Board stipulates.
Okay. And your area of expertise.
Fire safety, fire science, and fire codes.
And I know you have because we worked on this before, but could you please give the board whether you've been accepted as an expert in that field before other boards or courts of the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I've testified before approximately 50 to 60 boards throughout New Jersey, planning and zoning. I've also testified in Superior Court in Bergen County, Passaic County, and Hudson County, and been accepted as an expert in the areas of fire and fire safety. I've also been published throughout the United States. I've been an instructor at various state academies and local academies, both in New Jersey and throughout the United States. I've also instructed internationally in Canada and the United Kingdom for the International Association of Arson Investigators, with a specialty in fire protection as well as fire-related human behavior. In 1997, I was asked by the U.S. Fire Administration to co-author a text on that topic for their Degrees at a Distance program, which has been accepted and has been used since 1997 in the presentation of that degree program.
I would also offer Mr. Naglis as an expert in this field. Great, thank you, very impressive. So, Mr. Naglis, you know that we received some time ago a report, and you've worked with the captain on other projects in Union Township. But briefly,
Yes, I have.
take us through the questions that were raised by Captain Guzman, along with your response to each of those, and I know you've also had an opportunity to speak to Captain
Certainly.
Guzman.
Captain Guzman sent me a copy of his revised document. I received this in July of this year, and he noted that there were some changes made to the original plans, but he still had some concerns that he wanted to address. He said that the fire department's losing access to all sides of the building with the covered parking area that's planned, and there were no height measurements for the covered area, so it was determined that it would not meet the minimum 11-foot clearance for our biggest engine. My understanding is the plans have been revised, and it's now providing 12 feet. So it does, in fact, meet what the requirements would be for the fire department. He said also putting any rig in a covered parking area during fire operations would be putting that rig and its crew in the direct potential collapse zone. That's anticipating that there would in fact be a collapse. However, further on, we discussed the sprinkler system and the fire protection system, and I'll get into the specific nuances of that in just a moment. The same issues still apply for the ladder truck if the only entrance and exits on Larchmont, and he talked about power lines. There's access from Morris Avenue side, but being that the building was moved forward closer to Morris, roughly 30 feet, but with how busy the street is, that poses a whole different set of challenges with safety, especially at night. And so he said he was concerned about the power and communications lines, the covered parking area, and he wanted sprinklers or completely removed, no EV charging station under the covered roof area, bollard protection for the EV parking spaces, one sprinkler system for the entire complex, and I'll talk about the sprinkler design in just a moment. And then he also talked about making sure that the fire department connection would be run out to the street, and he was asking for it to be next to a fire hydrant. So I sent him an email, and then I followed that up with a telephone call, and we had a very good discussion about these particular aspects that he raised. And I thought that they were very, very well thought out questions from a fire protection point of view. First and foremost, we discussed the sprinkler system. The sprinkler system under the building code could be designed as what is called an NFPA 13R system. That's a residential type sprinkler system. And the design for that is for 4 sprinkler heads flowing, and it's meant to be an evacuation system, meaning that it gives occupants a window of opportunity to self-evacuate in the event of a fire. It is not a very robust system, and it's, again, only designed to allow people to escape. And I recommended to him, and I recommended to my client, that a better and safer option would be go to a full NFPA 13 type sprinkler system. And the difference there is that that system is not just designed for 4 heads flowing, but the design is based on an area and density requirement. And in this case, it would be a 0.10 GPM per square foot over a design area of 1,500 square feet. So you would have more water flowing, covering a greater area, and providing a higher level of protection. The other big, and most important feature of an NFPA 13 system is that it would require sprinkler protection in all the interstitial spaces. That is, the space that is between the ceiling and the floor above. If you recall, approximately 10 years ago, there was a rather serious fire at a building complex called the Avalon at Edgewater. That was a fire that destroyed a building that had 488 apartment units. And it was started by a worker who was trying to solder a pipe. And it was in an interstitial space. And the flames went up, and they thought that the fire was put out when they threw some water on it. They took a break, went away, and when they got back some 45 minutes later, What in fact had happened was that the flames had continued upward, involved all of the interstitial spaces, and ultimately destroyed the entire building. There were no sprinklers in the interstitial spaces at the Avalon at Edgewater. It had an NFPA 13R system. This system at this building would be more robust and actually exceeds the fire safety requirements of the Uniform Construction Code by saying that we're going to sprinkler on a wider area, we're going to have more robust fire protection, and we're going to include sprinkler protection for the interstitial spaces. From my point of view and my experience working on sprinkler systems and fire protection systems, this is a superior alternative to an NFPA 13R system. Continuing on, and by the way, my client, when I explained all of this, agreed to do this in this particular system, building. He raised the issue of the location of the fire department connection. The code actually specifies that the fire department connection, and if you see on the plans, it'll say that FDC, that's jargon, if you will, for the fire service. It indicates that's where the fire department can hook up. And the code requires, because this will also have standpipes, that it would have to be within 100 feet of a fire hydrant. So wherever that is designed for and brought to, and in this case, Captain Guzman had asked that it be located away from the building, out near Larchmont. We could do that, but we'd have to make sure that wherever the hydrant is, we have to be within 100 feet. That's a code requirement. And what that's for is so that the fire department, when they come, they can attach their hose to the fire department connection, reinforce the sprinkler system, providing even more water to help combat a fire should one, in fact, be burning. And again, my client did agree to providing that. He also raised a concern about the sprinkler system, and he didn't want to shut down the entire building if they only had 1 or 2 sprinkler heads flowing that were controlling a fire. That's one of the big benefits of sprinkler protection, is that only 1 or 2 heads need to go off to stop a fire and control it. Additionally, it would have what's called a monitored feature, so that when the water begins to flow, it trips what is called a flow switch. That flow switch sends a signal to the fire alarm control panel, which in turn transmits an alarm to a monitored location, so they call the fire department and make sure that they respond as quickly as possible. It's a very desirable feature of sprinklers. And so while the sprinklers are actively engaged and putting water on the fire, a signal has already been sent now to the fire department. The other nice thing is because it's immediately containing and controlling the fire, the benefit is that they would use less water than a non-sprinkler fire. Additionally, if it's happened in an interstitial space, the sprinklers would activate. If this was a 13R system, we wouldn't realize that benefit, and the fire could burn uncontrolled for a period of time. So we're going to address that by putting sprinklers there as well. I think that that's a very superior approach to fire protection. He wanted to make sure that they could isolate individual units without having to shut down the entire building. That's a function of sprinkler design and can be incorporated into the sprinkler design for this project. And that is so that you have control valves at each entrance to the apartment unit. But what you would do is you would have a single fire department connection that feeds all of the units. So it can supply maximum water, but enables the fire department to contain and control how much water is flowing to a particular apartment by shutting off that control valve and not endangering the remainder of the building, and in effect, leaving the sprinklers for the rest of the building in service, which again, I view as a very desirable feature of the fire protection system. I spoke with my client about the benefit of, and code requirement actually, for bollards and impact protection for the EV area, and they immediately said, yes, that's something that we're going to do, regardless of whether or not it was required by the code. It's just a very common sense type of thing to do. I want to make sure I covered all the other areas that he brought up. Fire department. With respect to the EV charging station under the covered roof, I am not sure, I didn't see clearly enough on the design, so I don't know if the EV charging station is under the covered roof or not.
Yeah, the EV was moved outside.
So I have been advised that the EV charging station has been moved out from underneath. Just so everyone is aware, there will be sprinkler protection under the covered roof as well. So if a vehicle catches fire, the sprinklers will activate and they will try to control the fire from spreading to other vehicles. And again, we'll have the benefit of detection activating with the flow switch so that we can know that there is in fact the fire happening and the fire being controlled. The last item that I discussed with Captain Guzman was his request about power lines, telephone lines, and so forth. And I asked him, why did he want that? And he said, well, what if I had to set up the aerial in order to get to the roof? And I said, and this is where I drew upon my experience as a career firefighter in Atlantic City, where I was assigned to a truck company. And I said, you know, one of the most dangerous things that I ever did in my life was climb an aerial ladder in the middle of winter with a wind blowing off the Atlantic Ocean and some spray hitting the ladder, turning it into a icy situation. And so I took from that, and I did a lot of studying when I went to college, as well as later in life in the fire service, and I came to the realization that there are better ways to access a roof. In the interest of firefighter safety, I have long been an advocate of using interior stairs and a bulkhead door to access the roof rather than trying to climb a ladder to go up or to come down, particularly owing to things like darkness, foul weather, cold weather, wind, and so forth. And Captain Guzman agreed. He said he would appreciate it, and he felt that that was a better alternative over having an aerial ladder to have to get to and access the roof. They don't have to do it all that frequently, but they may have to, because we'll have condenser units and equipment and things like that on the roof. This provides a safe way for the firefighters to get to the roof, to access that equipment, and contain any emergency that may occur. I'll also comment briefly on the parapet wall. I would be a proponent of putting that parapet wall in, and again, for a safety factor to the firefighters, so that you have some sort of fall protection, so that the firefighters don't get too close to the edge and fall off. That would be a horrible, horrible situation. So I think that that was a wise move to put the parapets in there, and that we have these bulkheads so that we can get to the roof and not have to worry about trying to climb an aerial ladder. So putting on my firefighter hat, I've been a volunteer firefighter for 50 years. I was a technical book editor for fire engineering for 5.5 years, and I worked with some of the leading authors in the country on firefighting tactics, strategies, and things to do, and I communicate with them on a regular basis. And these are the types of discussions that we have. And so I would stake my reputation and my background and my life's work on the recommendations I made, and I'm thankful that Captain Guzman agreed with me on these things and said that these were make sense recommendations as well, and I said I'm going to give them to my client, and I can testify today that my client agreed to everything that I had discussed with Captain Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Neglis. No further questions at this time, Mr. Chairman?
Questions from the board?
Mr. Nalis,
Yes,
for the roof access, how are we?
I don't hear so well, so I'm just going to
So for the roof access, what are we doing with that? How's that working? That's,
The stair tower is a 2-hour rated fire tower.
Okay.
So that even if there's a fire in, say, an apartment or a hallway, you can get into the stair tower and climb the stairs, and you're protected with a 2-hour enclosure so that you can walk up the stairs to the roof.
okay, thank you.
If you look at some buildings that have burned out in the foreseeable past, the one that struck me the most was the Mark Howell paper mill fire in Elmwood Park. After that complete complex burned to the ground and you drove along Route 80, you saw these towers, which were the stair towers, that were still there. And it kind of proved the point.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions for, other questions from the board? Engineer? I had a question just to clarify the comment with regards to transferring overhead lines to buried lines. Can you confirm that basically what is in the plan is actually not buried lines?
I'm sorry, could you read?
You glance very quickly on the comment with regards to making the power and telephone lines buried underground.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get the sense of a confirmation if those lines are actually going to be buried in this application. So can you confirm that?
I did not recommend that they be buried. I think that they don't have to be, and I would recommend to my client that they proceed with using the stair tower and the bulkhead so that we have firefighter access. I don't really see a need or a benefit of burying the power or communications lines.
When was that recommendation made by you?
I spoke to Captain Guzman on, make sure I got my dates here correct. I spoke to him on October 25th.
October 25th.
Yes.
Okay.
And I had email correspondence with him on, I'm sorry, I correct that, September 24th and 25th, and our telephone conversation was September 25th. Apologize, I thought it was October.
So the conversation was made on September 25th?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I think the main issue that I have here is that the Collier's letter that is dated on August 30th, 2024 on page 2, and it says on the second paragraph, the changes requested by the Union Fire Department were included on the revised plans, including the proposed hydrant enlargement terrace, the fire department connection, and transfer from overhead to buried electrical and telephone wiring between utility poles 6475-7 UN and 6368-0 UN.
That was in August.
That
Yeah.
was in August.
I can clarify that. After discussions with Captain Guzman, that's when we brought Jerry on board to look at it and look for an even safer way, including the upgrade to the R13 rather than R13R, and then the bulkhead.
Okay. So that means then there's no underground power and telephone wiring.
Correct, and he's the expert, but in my meetings and discussions with Captain Guzman, that was because they were thinking of coming in on Larchmont and fighting the fire from the ladders off of Larchmont up onto the roof, whereas now they would be done by that secure bulkhead.
I don't have any further questions. Yes, go ahead.
Sir, if you're operating the stick,
Mhm.
you want a full scrub of the building.
Right.
You don't think that it would be better to have underground wires?
No,
You don't think that's an obstacle?
I have to be honest with you, I wouldn't try to fight this from the exterior because the sprinklers will be controlling the fire. That means that the atmosphere in an apartment, based on fire tests that were conducted by Factory Mutual and UL, demonstrate that the temperature would drop from approximately 400 degrees down to about 100 to 120 degrees, and that the fire department could come in with a hose line off of a standpipe and do any type of mop-up, remembering that the sprinklers would still be operating, and there wouldn't really be a need to be operating off of ladders.
But sir, aren't all fires incident dependent of what's happening? I'm baffled at why you wouldn't want the wires to be underground. I'm just baffled.
I don't see a need to try and fight a fire from the exterior. I really believe that using the built-in fire protection is a superior alternative to trying to do manual firefighting from the exterior.
Okay, thank you.
And I will just say that one of the things that I did create when I went to work for Factory Mutual back in 1987 was I created a training program that is distributed worldwide, actually. It's called Fighting Fires in Sprinklered Buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to, Steve, you may want to look at sheet, five of 11, where you have the notes that are saying the applicant shall coordinate with the utility company, the feasibility, liability,
Yeah.
to run the power line underground.
Yeah, I recall that, and again, that's before we get Jerry on board.
I think that our group thought that you were doing that. If you're not going to do that, just make it.
We'll make a revision to the plan. Yep, no problem.
So my follow-up question is, I'm trying to visualize, and not a firefighter, can we show basically the floor plan and basically showcase how a firefighter would basically go in and fight the fire instead of going from the outside?
Sure. And I
Do you want to
show it
have
from
the,
I
do
don't-
you want the floor plan up there or not?
No, I can just explain it to you. I think easier.
We have
A fire in an apartment is a contained area. They have 1 hour rated firewalls between the units and also the corridor that you use to get from, say, a stair or an elevator to the apartment. There is also a fire rated door on the exterior as well. Keep in mind that if there is a fire, that the sprinklers are now active and flowing water on the fire, driving the temperature down. So what the fire department then has to do is just open the door, make entry. Yes, it's going to be hot. It's going to be about 100 to 120 degrees, but it's a lot better than having a fire rolling over your head, quite honestly. And that they can then make entry and knock down a fire if, in fact, there is still a fire burning that hasn't been fully extinguished or knocked down by the sprinkler system. Keeping in mind that most residential fires happen in one of two places, either the kitchen or a bedroom.
So are you saying that basically a firefighter would basically go in the typical entrance to an apartment, basically to fight the fire?
Yes, and keep in mind that what they would do, there is a pipe that is connected to the suppression system. It's called a standpipe. And that is located in the stair tower, so that the fire department could bring their hose in, hook up to the standpipe, stretch their hose line, be at the front door, and the minute that the door is open, they have water on their hose line, enabling them to go in and knock down any remaining fire.
And where's the standpipe located?
The standpipe would be the connection would be located in the stair tower, and that's to provide a level of protection again for the firefighter to hook up before they get onto the fire floor.
And just for clarification, and maybe the architect, so the stair level would be the common stair level, right above the common area?
The architect is indicating that that is correct.
Yeah, right, you're going to have to.
Just for the I'm not an architect, so I don't
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah, why don't you pull up the floor like to just have Mark Marion come back and show that floor plan.
Yeah, thank you.
So this is the core of the building, which has the elevator, utility room, and a fire stair. And you can see there's a door there. So within the fire stair is where, saying the standpipe would be located, and that's where they could ascend to the floor in question, hook up their hoses at that point, open this door to the stair, and then get into the common area, and then go enter whichever unit they need to enter with their hose.
Is there a standpipe on each floor?
I
Yes.
believe so, yeah.
I have a question for Mr. Naylor.
Yes.
Mr. Naylor, how would you anticipate a resident vacating the building if their apartment was
I'm
on
going to
fire?
come a little closer again. I have it here.
How would you expect the resident to vacate the building if their apartment was on fire?
My recommendation.
Here, again, back to the mic. Here,
The mic.
you can go to this one if you want.
Keep in mind that in addition to the sprinklers, there will also be early warning notification devices. That is a smoke alarm or smoke detector, depending on whether or not it's a single station or a device that's attached to a system. There will also be carbon monoxide alarms in the dwelling as well. So the resident or occupant will have advance warning even before the sprinkler activates that there's a fire, and they can safely self-evacuate from the apartment.
You would not expect them to have to use the egress window then?
Again,
You would not expect them to have to use the window to get out?
they wouldn't. I would never use a window to try and make an escape. The design of the code, which has evolved over many years, is such that these advance warnings are designed so people can make their way out of their apartment, into a protected hallway, into a stair tower that's providing a 2-hour level of protection so that they can get down and out of the building.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. Hearing none, questions from the public? Mr. Lieberman?
Thank you.
Mr. Lieberman?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Interesting presentation.
Thank you. I will just apologize. If you could speak a little loud, I really have some difficulty hearing.
No one has ever accused me of being too low before in my life, so I'm very excited about that. And I will raise my voice to make sure that you could hear me, okay?
Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome. So, there's only one stairwell. Doesn't the code require 2 means of ingress and egress, not just one?
Well, I believe that there is a regular stair tower, and there's an emergency stair tower as well that would provide the second means of egress. But again, I will defer to the architect on that issue.
Particularly for a building like this, 4 units per floor, 3 stories maximum, 1 stair is required in the building code.
Okay, thank you. Now, you indicated that the hallway could get up to 120 degrees? Is that what you said?
The temperature in the fire apartment could reach 120 degrees, even with the sprinklers flowing, yes.
Well, you said the temperature in the fire department. You mean the temperature in the hallway, right? Is that what you mean?
Temperature in the fire apartment,
Oh, in the fire apartment.
correct.
How about the stairs? What would you anticipate that the temperature in the stairs can be during a full-blown fire? What would you anticipate?
Ambient temperature?
So you're telling me that it would not be the same as the apartment? It would be a separate, it would not be 120 degrees. It would be lower, is that correct?
It would be much lower, whatever the ambient temperature is.
How much smoke would we anticipate would be in those stairs during a full-blown fire? How much smoke would be in there?
In the stair tower,
Yes.
I would not expect much smoke at all. The smoke would be in the apartment, and it might make its way out to the hallway, but I don't conceivably see a lot of smoke into the stair tower. However, this again is why we have a stairway that leads up to the bulkhead, and the fire department could open the stair tower door at the top of the bulkhead to allow for natural ventilation so that the smoke can rise and come out of the building.
Aren't what do you call them, buckets on fire trucks used for rescue in addition to fighting fires?
In some cases, I've seen that done, yes. I don't really recommend it. I think it's safer to use a stair tower.
Have you ever used a bucket in your lengthy experience to rescue people in Atlantic City when you were a firefighter?
No, didn't have to.
You didn't have to. Have you ever had your partners, firefighters, do the same? Have they ever done that there in Atlantic City, used a bucket to rescue people?
I have seen buckets used to try and rescue people. However, more times often than not, that is used to deliver massive master streams to a building that's completely on fire.
I understand.
It's not something that the fire department prefers to do.
Well, the fire department has a bucket truck. They have a ladder truck that would be more than adequate for handling this, and they have bucket trucks, right?
Yep.
And what you're doing by not burying the wires is you're not allowing, effectively, you're precluding those potential methods of fighting fires from occurring. Instead, you're insisting, by not burying the wires, that the stairs be used. That's what the net result is, yes?
I am using my talent, skills, and abilities based on 50 years of experience in fighting fires and identifying what I believe is the safest, more practical way to evacuate victims from a fire.
Yes, except when that's not feasible. A very severe fire, many people have to be rescued. Under those circumstances, you might have to have two methods of evacuation and not just one. Do you agree?
With all due respect, I don't share your opinion.
So, but what would be wrong with just following the captain's request that the power and communication lines be buried? Why not just do it to make sure that all possible avenues of rescue and firefight are available rather than limiting it to one? Why wouldn't you do that as a professional?
I don't believe it's necessary. I think it's a waste.
So it's a waste of what?
A waste of resources. In order to set up an aerial device, you have to have the driver who has to set the jacks and the outriggers out so that there's stabilization, so that you can lift it. You have to make sure that you're set at the right angle so that you can get to the window or to whatever area. It's a very involved process. It's not simply, oh, throw the ladder up and here it is. It takes time. And the fact of the matter, so for example, when we test an aerial ladder, there is a test that's done on the aerial device called raise, rotate, and extend. And you have to do that within 2 minutes' time. 2 minutes is a long time when you have somebody in a fire building. It's a lot smarter, it's a lot more practical to take a person who's in an apartment, whether there's smoke or fire or whatever the situation is, and bring that person out to a hallway and to a stair tower to bring them down than trying to wait until a aerial tower is in position and hope that they can safely get out of there. The other thing is, many people are afraid of heights. And as a
Well, they're
result-
probably afraid of fire, too.
But they can become combative and not want to get onto the aerial device.
Right.
And so, quite frankly, it's always better, and been my experience, take them down the stairs.
When you said it was a waste of resources, what resources were you talking about? I just want to make sure I understand.
Firefighting resources. Those personnel that are trying to set up that aerial device would be of much better use and utility going up the stairs and going into the fire apartment.
Don't they train for this? Isn't this part of their training in order to stabilize the truck so that they can raise the ladder and raise the buckets? Isn't this part of their regular routine training?
Firefighters are trained to raise ladders, yes.
Yes. And you did a lot of talking about what you talked about with the chief, and then you related to the board what the chief said to you. Did the chief say that he's going to revise again his letter to indicate that he's okay with everything you said? Are we going to get a new letter?
I put it in writing to him. I sent it to my client as well, and I put it in writing. He didn't send me back a revised letter.
Okay, so you sent him a letter telling him how you perceived the conversation to go, and he never sent back a letter saying that he's revising his demands, did he?
He did not.
Did he tell you he's going to do it?
He did not.
Did you ask him?
I said that I would send him a memo that summarized our conversation, and if he had any questions, that he could reach out to me. He did not.
The letter that's revised, and, you know, the one thing that I would say about the chief, he doesn't put dates on his letters, so it's a little hard to refer to this, but the one that says revised, which is the one you were talking about, right?
Correct.
It says, and I'm quoting here, UFD is now losing all access to all sides of the building with the covered parking lot area that's planned. Do you agree with the fire chief when he says they are now losing all access? Do you agree with him?
Well, the building hasn't been built yet, so they can't be using it right now.
Losing, no. The quote was, let me read the quote again, okay? And you could see it if you want. It said, UFD is now losing, not using, losing access.
Now losing access.
That's right, and that's what the fire chief's, do you agree with the fire chief's assertion that now the UFD is losing all sides, and all was in caps, of the building with the covered parking area? Do you agree with the fire chief that that's true?
I would question him, what does he characterize as losing access? Could you set up a ground ladder? The answer is yes. There is sufficient room in the setbacks so that a ground ladder could be set up if they needed to gain access. But I would also come back to you and say that it's better and safer to use the built-in fire protection and use the construction features of the building to provide better life safety opportunities.
Do you agree with me that there are occasions where what's easier and better isn't available because of a fire, and option B needs to be resorted to?
Unless I know what the circumstances are, I wouldn't hazard a guess.
How many times in your career as a firefighter, how many years were you a firefighter in Atlantic City, by the way?
I've been a firefighter for 51 years.
In the 51 years, is it your testimony that you never once took a bucket and went on a roof in order to fight a fire?
No,
You've done it.
not a bucket.
Did you take the ladder and go to a roof in Atlantic City to fight a fire?
Yes, I did.
And there were stairs that were available when you did that, but for whatever reason, the roof was optimal under the circumstances, correct?
Actually, it was a non-sprinklered building, and the fire had gained control of the stair tower.
Is it your testimony that the only time firefighters fight fires from the roof is when a building is unsprinkled? Is that your testimony?
I'm missing your, could you rephrase that question?
I will.
I better understand it.
I appreciate that. Is it your testimony that the only time that firefighters should use the roof in order to fight a fire is when a building is unsprinkled?
No, that is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that there are times when you may need to get to the roof. A safer way to get to the roof is up a fire-rated stair tower as opposed to trying to climb an aerial, or use an aerial bucket.
The chief also said in his revised letter that I'm quoting, putting any rig, and a rig is a fire truck, right?
Yes.
Putting any rig in the covered parking area during the fire operations would be putting that rig and its crew in the direct potential collapse zone. You heard him say that, right? That's what he said, right? Yes or no?
That is what he said.
And you believe that because you've changed the sprinkler system, that's no longer a factor. Is that what you're saying?
It's much less of a factor, yes.
You're-
I do not think that the building would be subject to collapse potential.
You're telling me that with the revised sprinkler system, collapse is impossible, can't happen.
I didn't say that, and you're twisting the words. What I said was, it's not probable.
He also wrote that the same issues still apply for the ladder truck if the only entrance or exit is on Larchmont, open parens, which has power and communication lines running across the driveways, rendering the ladder useless from the side. Do you agree with him that the power lines would render would render the ladder useless from that side. Do you agree with his contention?
No, I do not, because they could back the ladder into the drive aisles, and set up the aerial if they needed to get up to the roof using that. But I don't foresee a circumstance when that would be necessary.
So the fire chief was wrong.
I didn't say that. I said, you asked me, what do I think? I do not think it would be necessary.
I asked you if you agreed with him.
No.
There is no reason from a firefighting perspective why the request that the power and communication lines be placed underground, there's no reason from a firefighting perspective that that can't be done, is there?
Probably not. But from a practical point of view, it's better from a firefighting tactical point of view to use the built-in fire protection.
Or if you bury them, then you have both options available, and you don't have to pick one if the other is required, right?
I would always opt to use the built-in fire protection.
The sprinkler system, isn't it true that are you familiar with the plumbing code in New Jersey as it relates to sprinkler systems?
I have to correct you there. New Jersey does not allow plumbers to install sprinklers. That is under NFPA 13, which is the sprinkler code, and you have to be a certified fire sprinkler contractor to install them.
I appreciate the correction. Is it true that the sprinkler system in New Jersey needs to have a separate autonomous line?
In most cases, yes. The difference is in certain circumstances, such as limited area sprinkler systems, certain basement sprinklers, they can be tied off of the domestic line. However, in a building such as this, it would require it to have a separate water feed in order to supply the sprinkler system.
Does the utility drawing presented by the applicant show an independent water supply for the sprinkler system, to your knowledge?
That would be done as part of the sprinkler plan that is submitted during the construction phase.
The fire chief also said that you recommended that you loop in another hydrant placed on Larchmont Street, on the Larchmont Street side by the driveway area. Do you believe that the fire chief is wrong in making that recommendation as well?
I believe I testified that wherever the fire department connection, and that's going to be agreed to by the fire department, is where that fire department connection and a hydrant has to be within 100 feet. It may be on Larchmont, it may be on Morris. It's all part of the design, which is done through the plan review process when the construction drawings are submitted.
So when the fire chief said the Larchmont side, you think he was premature and that more information was required before that determination was made? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is that is an element that is considered during the construction phase.
And I don't have any further questions for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the public that is not a member from the Larchmont Association? I did have a couple follow-up questions, and we might have to shoot me back to the architect.
Okay.
I
Stay up
noticed,
there, Mark.
Thank you. There was a mention that there was a low chance of collapse of the building itself under circumstances of fire. What can you say to substantiate that?
In my town of Bergenfield, on December 13th, 2005, we had a natural gas line that was compromised by a contractor. The natural gas fed along the pipe that went into the building, and the gas filled the building, and the building exploded, and there was a collapse of a portion of that building. So if you have a very unusual set of circumstances like that, is it conceivable? It could happen, yes.
To narrow this down, I think my question really pertains to a fire that exists within the building that results in a collapse. What would you say is the probability of collapse?
Almost zero. I don't mean to be redundant, but it's really not conceivable, knowing what the construction is, what the fire protection is, the response of the fire department to get there, the fact that it's going to have early warning devices that initiate an alarm. I don't see a foreseeable means for why the building would sustain such damage that it would result in collapse. I will defer to the architect, though.
Mark, just use the mic, please.
He knows more than me. But sprinklers are there to save people, right? So the main goal is to get the people out of a building in a dangerous situation into a safe place. The building actually is somewhat secondary, and so it's all about time, and that's why we rate certain assemblies within a building for hours. That's how they're rated. It's like this wall will stay in place for an hour, or 2 hours, or 3 hours. And we have different assemblies that we use to compartmentalize a building. And we do that primarily to save people.
But I will also say that, and I thought I covered this rather carefully, if this was a 13R system, I would agree 100% with the architect. But I also know from my experience with Factory Mutual, and I had responsibility for buildings that were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And our testing and our research demonstrated that a fully functioning, adequately supplied sprinkler system can prevent structural collapse from occurring.
And you're basically testifying that regardless of whatever the construction material, the building itself, how it's structured.
The building as represented with an NFPA 13 system would not collapse, no. Now, I will also say, I am not saying that that's 100%, because if I have a gas explosion that blows a part of the building, or if I have a plane that crashes into a building, or a truck that crashes into a building, that's not something that is foreseeable or foreseen.
Just want to make sure, there's any other questions? Any other questions from the public that is not from the Larchmont Association? Okay. So I think we're done with this witness. However, we only have 3 minutes left.
That's fine.
So I think what we'll do is we'll carry this over to the January 23rd meeting. Considering that the association's here, I don't think we'll need to do it with notice. Mr. Pasquale, do we need to do a motion to carry this over?
Yeah, you should do a motion to.
All right. Can I get a motion on the floor to carry the hearing for application Watchung Developers, 1005 Larchmont Road? Can I get a motion to carry it over without notice?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we carry over the application number 2024-04, Watchung Developers, to the January 23rd meeting, where we can hear the rest of the testimony from the applicant and any testimony from the public.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I know you didn't vote, I'm sorry, but would you confirm that you'll bring all your witnesses back on that meeting?
We'll see. Yeah, they should be, yeah, they,
I think they have to be.
well,
I think we'll deal with that. You two will deal with that alongside with council here. Let's get through the motion
yeah.
and then.
And that's
Yeah.
7 o'clock, no further notice.
Correct. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Frank. Roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Cohan?
Yes.
Mr. Delay?
Yes.
Mayor Figarito?
Yes.
Mr. Frame,
Yes.
Ms. Khan.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Just before I acknowledge the motion, just to close the loop on that, what I would just expect is that just both parties work with our counsel as well. Again, I don't know if there's an opportunity, well, there could be, basically, with you bringing the witnesses back, there is obviously a way for you to provide more information through your witnesses, so basically, discretion.
That's
that
great.
point.
And I'd like to, again, thank the board, the public, and board professionals, and wish everyone a safe and happy holiday season.
Yes, happy holidays,
Have a
everyone.
good one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, there's a motion to adjourn by Mr. Cohan. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Khan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned, 10 o'clock.